I had no idea how long I lay there. I had no clock. My eyes were empty, familiar EFS and annoying alert boxes alike gone. Scotch had tried to wire Marmalade's pip-buck into my leg, but it produced some sort of feedback that felt like a drill was going through my skull. Glory could make better use of it anyway. But eventually, all my hating and loathing was boiled down to one simple, fundamental truth. I had to go pee. And that caused me to lift my head and slowly step up off the bed, and drove me, one step after the next, downstairs. The living room was empty, save for Scotch and the strange dragon filly Precious curled up on the couch together. The dragon hybrid opened her purple, slit-pupilled eyes and looked at me with cool detachment. I looked back a moment, and then she shrugged and lowered her head again. I stepped out into the drizzling, wet night and trod away to do my business. The cold air was sharp on my skin, and I had to admit that I found the chill refreshing. It didn't do much to get my mind off my problem, but as I looked up at the clouds over the city, their bottoms lit in that sickly green glow, I felt some of that weight on my mind shift. It didn't feel any better, but at least for the moment I'd beaten myself up so much that I'd worn myself out. Stepping back inside a moment later, I looked at the strange unicorn filly. She looked back at me. "Can't sleep either?" I whispered, glancing at Scotch. The hybrid gave a little shrug. "Don't talk much." She resumed staring at me. I couldn't help myself as I gave a half-hearted smile and said, "Got some zebra in you?" That got me a sullen, half-lidded look. A little tongue of green flame was snorted in my direction. "Right. Good talk." She lowered her head back down next to Scotch's. I trot back up to the room. There was the mattress. It seemed to be pulling me towards it. Lie down, give up, give in. And I wanted to. I'd failed Dusty, Priest, and myself by letting Sanguine get away. Why hadn't I tried to drag P21 along? Why hadn't I simply gone back for my bags? Said something to get him to take the gun off Sonata. The questions kept piling up and piling up. They made me want to scream. I looked at the mirror in the corner. At myself. I felt such a horrible loathing just then. Not of myself, oddly enough, but for my cutie mark. An ace and a queen. What did that mean? That I was 3 cards short of a winning hand? That I was better off with card tricks? Was that my special talent? I could have a cutie mark of a dead pony. No, a dead filly torn in two. That would sum me up pretty perfectly. Actually, no, this worked. Even my cutie mark was a complete failure. I didn't deserve it. It was all wrong for me, and I hated it. There was a soft thump in the corner, making me jump a little. I looked at Octavia's contrabass for the longest time. I suppose that when I'd shut the door, it shifted and thumped against the wall. I walked towards it with hesitant steps and gently plucked the strings. I could almost imagine my heart, or whatever lump of machinery I now possessed in place of a heart, twinging in response. Another string, and another. I wasn't really playing anything as I looked at the gleaming wires. Slowly, I stood it upright and reached over with my hoof and picked up the black-haired bow, still holding it as I had when I was a pony. I rested my cheek against the knob of wood at the top for a moment, then started to play. I didn't have a particular song in mind, just letting the deep notes rise and fall however seemed natural at the time. It was sad music, but that seemed appropriate. I imagined that Octavia had always been a serious pony. Fussy, like Velvet Remedy and P21 combined. I imagined her practicing just like this. Had she loved it? Hated it? No. I smiled a little to myself. She might have hated making music into a career, but she'd never hated the music itself. Closing my eyes, I could imagine myself on a stage in front of thousands. Sometimes alone, where every note was criticized and analyzed. Sometimes the others, where the whole became so much more vital than the individual. I thought that Octavia would have preferred playing alongside others. I remembered how rich and how beautiful the instrument had sounded with lacuna, medley, and priest. For a moment I stopped and just held the contrabass as if it were all that held me upright. Right now it probably was. The smooth wood was warm against my cheek. It hurt so damn much. I'd done worse than failed. I'd lost. But the cost of winning would have been 2 lives, not 1. Couldn't I take solace in that? Shouldn't I? I felt an overwhelming urge then and there to put the instrument away forever. Give it to the Crusaders who could appreciate it. Not me. Not now. Not ever. My hoof must have slipped, because the contrabass gave another sour thrum as my hoof brushed against it. I sniffed and, stilling a little, I straightened and lifted the bow once more. Again I played, and I imagined Octavia playing later in her life, after her peace concert ruined her career. I imagined her playing to smaller and smaller audiences, dingier and plainer theaters. Then, one day, she was alone in her tiny apartment above mixers. Had she looked at herself then, seen her own cutie mark, and felt the same sense of failure? So much work, time, and suffering, now all for nothing? I suspected that she had. I suspected that she'd looked at her musical cutie mark and felt the same disgust I had. Had she raged? Had she wept? Or did she simply, quietly, quit inside? Like me. I wondered if that was when rarity had found her. Lost and alone and at her worst. Octavia had probably been thankful for any help that could be extended to her. I imagined her leaving with rarity and, when she returned, struggling to make her music work. Hoofing it back and forth from flank to the manor and the ruin. Taking the bus wagon whenever she could, not giving up, because as long as she was playing, there was hope. She was still Octavia. In those final minutes in her apartment in flank, with radiation poisoning her, what had she played? I tried to imagine it, and my hoof moved accordingly. Regret came from the strings. Frustration marred the notes. But finally, peace. Even as her body sickened and failed, peace. And then she neatly put away her instrument, sealed it up, laid down, and died. The last note seemed to echo forever in my heart, long after my ears stopped hearing it. "It's not time to give up," I whispered, not sure where the words were coming from as I rested my cheek on the strings. "You've come so far, and you've got so much further to go." I stared at my reflection, at my cutie mark. Priest wouldn't want you like this. He knew you shouldn't be here, alone, hating yourself. You know what you need to do. So, get off your rump and do it. I said to my own reflection as I held the contrabass in my hooves. The question was, how? I set the instrument in the corner inside. I wanted to just grab a bag of gems, climb up on the bed again, and munch on them till I didn't feel anything anymore. I was a little snacky. Then I started to suckle on a chimney ruby. I wondered if Spike liked rubies as well. I spat out the gooey, half-dissolved gem and stared at it for a moment. But then I looked back over my shoulder at the door. What if... No, it was stupid. It wouldn't help, wouldn't work. But I trot back downstairs, my bag of gems tossed over my shoulder. Carefully, I fished out an amethyst and extended the purple gem towards Precious. She looked at it skeptically. Her horn glowed, and the purple filly floated it to her. She looked confused. I hoped this would work. I lifted my half-ingested ruby and popped it into my mouth. For a moment, she looked at me like I were crazy. then put the purple gem in her mouth. At once, her eyes popped wide in shock. Apparently, giving fillies mild addictive substances was really effective. In another life, I must have been a dash dealer or something. 2 more gems later, and she followed me back up to my room. So, Precious, can we talk? She gave me that confused and slightly guarded look. I mean, can you talk? You seem to be understanding me, so... She swallowed the emerald she'd been chewing on, then replied in a surprisingly soft voice. Yes, I talk. So, how'd Sanguine turn you into... this? I asked as I gestured to her. She drew back, frowning. I raised my hooves. Not that there's anything wrong with you, I'm just wondering how it happened. That mollified her enough that she relaxed. Born sick. Bad bones. Doc made me part dragon to make me feel better. Ponies thought I was a freak. I am. Got in a fight. Doc put me to sleep. She looked to the window. Woke up. Told me I had to help him. Said no. He said he'd make me a normal pony again. Well, that was nice of him, I said, but she looked sour once again. Saving you, I mean. The pretty yellow pony lady talked him into it. Guess ponies and dragons don't mix. She looked at her spade-tipped tail. When I got into fights with some ponies that teased me, I got put to sleep with the others. How'd you get to chapel? Did you walk or fly or... We went through tunnels. Bad, scary tunnels. When we got outside, we met those kitty birds. Tunnels. Crap. We were walking a long time, though. Had to hide lots. If my friends planned on tracking my pip-buck, then that would mean going back underground. Nothing good came from underground in this place. Knowing Sanguine, he'd be setting up all sorts of traps and nasty things. Theoretically, I knew where hippocampic research was from the tag the professor had given me, between Zenith Bridge and Toll on the east side of the river. Realistically, there were several square miles it could be in, and who knew what we'd face in that bombed-out and blasted ruin. If Sanguine was taking tunnels, then they probably wouldn't be able to cut him off at the bridge. It could take another day of searching to find more Reapers and Rangers. Precious, do you have a lot of memories of the building and stuff? She scowled but nodded. I felt a little surge of triumph. If this worked, then when Sanguine got back home, we'd be waiting for him. Yes, some. Clearly not happy memories. I was normally kept in my room. I wanted to go around outside, but Mr. Sanguine told me I wasn't allowed to go, because the trees were bad. The trees were bad? I echoed with a frown. How so? They try to eat you. She gave a shrug, then blew a little tongue of green flame. Can I have another? She asked as she pointed at my stash of gems. I pushed the bag at her, and she picked out another amethyst. So the trees are bad. Anything else? I wanted to take notes. Monsters? She said simply. What kind of monsters? Given what I've seen so far, that didn't really narrow things down. Just monsters. The bad kind all over the place. Bugs, plants, doggies. She said simply, as if I were stupid for thinking that there were other kinds. There's also the fatties. They look like ponies, but they're all big and dumb. Lots of fatties work for the doc. Cora always likes killing them. She's creepy. I noticed. The filly rubbed her chin again before adding absently. And there's the poison stuff.